Have you ever reached that point in the middle of the night? The kind where your eyelids feel like bricks, your thoughts blur, and yet someone's life still depends on your next move. For every night shift nurse, every doctor fighting medical burnout, every caregiver whispering a quick prayer between alarms, this story is for you. There's a kind of miracle that happens when exhaustion meets divine purpose, though most people never notice it. Because the truth is, not all miracles come with flashing lights and heavenly choirs. Some wear scrubs and clock in at 2 a.m. Now here's the controversy. What if the very fatigue we try to escape is actually the doorway to faith-based healthcare, where God and medicine meet in quiet hallways? What if burnout isn't just a breakdown, but a breakthrough in disguise? For many Christian nurses and doctors, the night shift isn't just work, it's worship. It's where faith over fatigue becomes more than a slogan, it becomes survival. And in those moments when healthcare spirituality collides with human weakness, that's when divine purpose starts whispering. So tonight, we're going to talk about that kind of miracle, the one hidden in fluorescent lights, whispered prayers, and trembling hands. We'll explore how Christian healthcare workers rediscover purpose in healthcare, how spiritual healing for caregivers revives exhausted hearts, and how faith can turn even the darkest night into holy ground. Because maybe, just maybe, your next shift isn't just another night. It's the setting for your own miracle. When the weight of the night feels too heavy, there's a certain silence that only the night shift knows. The hum of machines, the echo of distant footsteps, the quiet tears shed behind a mask. Every night shift nurse has felt it, that mix of duty and depletion, the tug between nursing motivation and sheer survival. When fatigue blurs the line between compassion and collapse, even the strongest hearts question their calling. Yet, buried deep in that exhaustion lies something sacred, a chance to discover what faith in healthcare really means. Many Christian nurses say the hardest part isn't the lack of sleep, it's the feeling of being unseen. The world rests while they carry its pain. That's when the whispers of doubt creep in. Am I really making a difference? Does God even see me here? But that's where God in the hospital reveals his quiet presence, not in grand gestures, but in the gentle strength that carries one more patient, one more prayer, one more night. And that, right there, is the seed of divine purpose growing in darkness. Sometimes purpose doesn't shout, it sighs. It shows up in the exhausted nurse who still smiles at 4 a.m., or the Christian doctor who prays before delivering bad news. The miracle isn't always in the healing, it's in the heart that refuses to quit. And as the night deepens, something begins to shift, a sense that this burden might actually be a calling. But to truly understand that, we have to look deeper into what happens when burnout meets belief. Burnout or breakthrough, the hidden lesson behind the fatigue. At first glance, nurse burnout looks like failure, trembling hands, hollow eyes, prayers that sound more like sighs. But what if medical burnout isn't just the end of strength, but the beginning of surrender? Many Christian healthcare workers discover that burnout isn't a curse, it's an invitation. When their own strength runs dry, that's when faith begins to take over. It's in the stillness between heartbeats, in the whispered, "Lord, I can't do this alone," that spiritual healing for caregivers begins to unfold. Think of it like a reset button for the soul. One Christian nurse once said she found her purpose not in a promotion or praise, but during a 3 a.m. moment when she simply held a patient's hand and prayed silently. That's faith-based healthcare in its rawest form. No spotlight, no sermon, just compassion as an act of worship. When caregivers realize that God and medicine can coexist, that science and spirit are not rivals but partners, healthcare spirituality becomes a powerful force of recovery. And here's the beautiful paradox. The same exhaustion that once drained them now becomes the soil where divine purpose grows. Every tear, every weary step, every whispered "help me" becomes proof that faith over fatigue is more than survival, it's transformation. But how do these night shift warriors actually sustain that faith when their bodies are breaking and their minds are fogged? The answer might surprise you. It lies not in doing more, but in learning to rest differently. Learning to rest in the midst of the storm. Rest, for many healthcare workers, sounds like a luxury. There's always one more chart to sign, one more call light blinking, one more life depending on them. Yet, true rest isn't found in sleep alone. It's found in surrender. Christian nurses and doctors of faith often learn that rest isn't stepping away from their calling. It's stepping closer to God in the middle of it. When exhaustion becomes unbearable, that's the perfect time to let divine strength take over. That's what faith in healthcare really looks like. Working hard, but trusting harder. Take the story of a night shift nurse who began praying during her breaks instead of scrolling through her phone. She said it changed everything, not the workload, but her heart. The weight felt lighter, her patients felt more human, and her purpose more alive. That's spiritual encouragement for nurses in action, the kind that turns ordinary routines into sacred rhythms. Even 5 minutes of silence, gratitude, or whispered prayer can reset an entire shift. And here's the irony. When nurses and doctors stop fighting their fatigue and start inviting faith into it, their energy doesn't just return, it multiplies. This is the secret to healthcare burnout recovery that most self-help books miss. It's not about doing less or more, but doing everything with purpose. When you learn to rest with God, not from Him, your night shifts start feeling less like survival and more like sacred duty. But this realization often sparks a deeper question. What if this calling isn't just about healing others, but about transforming yourself too? When healing others heals you too, there's something profound that happens when Christian healthcare workers realize that every act of care is also a mirror. The compassion they pour out doesn't just flow one way, it begins to heal their own weary hearts. Every time a night shift nurse prays over a patient or a Christian doctor offers comfort beyond the prescription, something divine stirs inside them. It's as if God in the hospital is using every moment, every wound dressed, every life touched, to whisper, "This is your purpose." Think of faith-based healthcare as a two-way healing process. When caregiver exhaustion threatens to steal joy, faith breathes it back. A nurse once said she started keeping a gratitude journal at the end of every shift, not to document the chaos, but the small moments of grace. A patient's smile, a coworker's prayer, the sunrise after a long night. That simple act turned her exhaustion into worship. This is emotional healing for healthcare workers at its finest, not escaping the hardship, but finding holiness in it. In truth, finding purpose in medicine often means realizing that God uses you as the medicine. Every time a caregiver chooses kindness over frustration or hope over despair, they experience spiritual healing for caregivers in motion. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. And that presence, powered by faith, begins to change how they see everything, even the toughest nights. But this revelation leads to something even deeper. What if this faith-driven healing could ripple beyond the hospital walls, touching the world outside the night shift too? Carrying the light beyond the hospital walls. When the sun finally rises after a long night, most people see an ending. But for Christian nurses and doctors of faith, it's just the beginning of another kind of service, one that extends beyond the beeping machines and sterile corridors. The lessons learned on the night shift, compassion, humility, perseverance, become tools for life. Those who embrace faith and work in healthcare start realizing their calling isn't confined to the hospital. It's a lifestyle. They bring healthcare spirituality into their homes, churches, and communities, becoming living reminders that God and medicine were never meant to be separate. A nurse once shared that she started leading a small group at her church for other exhausted nurses and Christian doctors struggling with burnout. They didn't meet to vent, they met to heal. They prayed, shared stories, and reminded each other that faith over fatigue isn't a slogan, it's a survival strategy. Through those gatherings, miracles began to multiply, not in operating rooms, but in hearts rediscovering hope. That's what purpose in healthcare really looks like when it flows beyond the workplace. Because in the end, the miracle in the night shift isn't just about one nurse or one moment, it's about the movement. A quiet, growing army of Christian healthcare workers choosing faith in the face of exhaustion, light in the middle of darkness. They're proving that nursing motivation isn't born from caffeine or adrenaline, but from divine purpose. And as that light spills beyond the night shift, it becomes a beacon, guiding others toward hope, healing, and the kind of peace that only faith can bring. So here's the truth. The next time you walk into that hospital, clinic, or care home, you're not just showing up for another shift. You're stepping into sacred ground. Every sigh, every smile, every whispered prayer is part of a divine story unfolding through you. The miracle in the night shift isn't something that happens once. It's something you become. Every Christian nurse, every faith-based doctor, every exhausted caregiver who keeps showing up with love, you're living proof that faith over fatigue works. But now comes the real question. What will you do with this light? Will you keep it within the hospital walls, or will you let it shine into your everyday life? How might your faith reshape your approach to purpose in healthcare, your view of burnout, or even your understanding of God's calling? Remember, transformation doesn't start in comfort. It begins in exhaustion, the exact place where divine purpose meets human weakness. If this message spoke to your heart, don't let it stop here. Let's keep building a community of hope, strength, and Christian inspiration for nurses and all healthcare heroes. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that they're not alone. Because when God and medicine walk hand in hand, miracles don't just happen, they multiply.